It's Ambar. It's Ambar.
Hey y'all, it's Bars, and you're here with Bars Says So. Thank you for always tuning in. Thank you for listening to my playlist. Make sure you go on my website, www.barssaysso.com, to catch up on the latest, topics that I've been talking about. And I've really been taking my time this year, not really trying to force anything, doing it when I can and when I want to. And so, if you are listening thus far still, I appreciate you, sending you love, light, and just positive vibes over here. Um so last topic was about accountability, and today's topic is about isolation. And I have a special guest as well. I want him to introduce himself, let you guys know what it is that he does and what he is striving to do. Young person that I'm learning from. We learn from each other as a society. So that's what I'm here to do, is kind of just give you my thoughts, give you my taste so that you can have a different perspective. I'm speaking to everyone at this moment. Jordany.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. And once again, thank you to everybody that tunes into the podcast. I always listen to every single episode and I love this podcast, so this is an honor. And about me, I wouldn't call myself an influencer, but I do like to touch certain topics on social media. I'm main on Instagram, so you see a lot of me on there. I talk about mental health, a lot about music because I'm really into the music industry and the music and the sounds and all of that. And I'm just looking to discuss about different topics that you wouldn't see people talk about every single day and talk about the unsaid.
Right. I totally agree. I think that, most of the time when we're on social media and like my generation, we grew up with all the phases, and to see how it has boomed and how people can, be influencers and make money online, like freely doing what it is that they love. Like I encourage that. I wish that I probably would have tapped into it a little bit more. But growing up, it's like, oh, you got to go to school, you got to get a job, so you don't really want to tap into that creative, or you don't have time to tap into that creative avenue. So to see that people are doing it freely and it's so accessible, I love to see it. So shout out to everybody
Absolutely.
who's on the gram, getting their coin, doing their Instagram thing.
Yes, definitely.
So today's topic, isolation, you know, to kind of sum it down to what I feel isolation has done for me. Um, it has literally changed my perspective. There's some times where I look at things and I'm just like, damn, like, why was I so hard on myself? And with the COVID-19 pandemic, it forced everybody to kind of sit with their own thoughts, even if they didn't want to, you know? And how did, where were you at that time mentally? And how has being isolated impacted your spiritual practices or beliefs?
During the time of isolation and of COVID-19, I was mentally learning a lot. And I was mentally just going through the normal struggles or the normal path of a person my age. And I, my spiritual journey, I was learning a lot. And it was the mid, a little bit of the beginning of my journey. So I was learning a lot during the isolation because isolation just gives you time to think. And with all that time to think, you really discover a lot about yourself. And what you were saying made me really think about reflection. And it's all about reflection all the time you get to yourself and what that really means.
Yes, yes. And I kind of spoke about that in my earlier episode in self reflection. You kind of have to put yourself in that position so that you can really find the ways that you love yourself, or that you can be around yourself, even like yourself. Love is a really strong word. So, of course, it's just trying to grasp a sense of yourself, kind of not let yourself go and
Absolutely.
keep it moving. Have you found that isolation has deepened your connection to spirituality? Like you said that you felt like you became a little bit more spiritual. Can you elaborate?
Definitely. And like we were speaking in the beginning of the episode, I think this has a lot to do with social media and my generation because I honestly gravitated a lot towards the spiritual path through social media. And there's pros and cons to that, in my opinion. And for me personally, I do believe that the impact of isolation was forcing me to be on social media, so it steered me on that path. And I was introduced to it before the pandemic. So I had kind of an idea of how it worked because I had family members who read cards. And I was just very interested just looking at it. And that leads to the fact that I believe that the spiritual community was more of an in person type of experience before the COVID-19 and before the isolation. And that's something to really be interested in, like, and really look at, because now I feel like we see a big presence of the spiritual community being involved in social media and on live and on certain websites and TikTok, and it's just different than when it originally started, and that different is what I'm accustomed to. So it's interesting to see the evolution, and that isolation gave me the opportunity to be a part of that evolution and really learn a lot, because social media gave me the chance to learn so much from this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Because back in the day, I'm talking like I'm old, but back when I knew of spirituality, I definitely wasn't introduced to it through social media. That's one. And two, not a lot of people would kind of express their spirituality because certain people have their opinions on how they feel, as they should. Everybody has their beliefs and their values, so we respect everybody, you know what I'm saying. But I totally see that there has been a growth in kind of the outlets that they have now. And you got to be careful too online, because everybody likes to say they know a certain
Exactly.
thing, but they really don't. You got to, and for me, I think an individual's practice is more important than trying to learn and tap into anybody else's energy. You
Of
feel me?
course.
Because once you start diving in those realms, you got to be, cautious.
Yes, and I was also like looking at it, and I was, like you said, a lot of people on social media especially take the, I don't want to call it a trend because it's such a powerful thing, but they think of the spiritual path and the spiritual beings to be like a trend, and they use it for clout
Right.
sometimes. And I just really think we need to be careful about who we're listening to and what information they're feeding us, because that's that's something we really need to be careful about and protect ourselves from that type of energy.
So, tapping into that, I wanna ask another question. How do you maintain a sense of community and connection with others, with you saying, with social media in your spiritual practice? Do you think
I
you
think
have a good community in that aspect?
I think for sure, like I said, there's some people you need to watch out for, but I feel like this also helps you build such a great community and meet new people and really build what they call today a soul tribe. And I feel like that's really important because, especially during the isolation period, where we were spending a lot of time alone, and we may have been losing another type of community, but we were also gaining this type of community because it was finding us, and we were finding our paths with it. And a lot of people were going through that same thing, and we were all going on a certain path. And having that support from each other, I think, is really important.
Yeah, no, support is definitely important, and reaching out is definitely important, especially in this day and age. I think the mental health crisis is the highest it's been. People have been
Yes.
self-harming and overdosing and self-medicating. So I want to pause and say, if anybody needs help, and is battling with mental health issues, please reach out to the closest, or there's a number now. Let me look it up because I don't want to I don't want to spread misinformation, but there's a hotline that you can call, and the number is 988. So you just call 988 on your phone, and that should connect you to a mental health specialist or somebody that could, guide you. I think it's important to how people go to the gym, people eat healthy foods, they change their diet. I think it's healthy to have a therapist to at least once in your lifetime, no matter what age you are, no matter where you background you came from. You might have came from the most beautiful family, everybody has something that they need to talk to somebody who doesn't know them per se. Do you agree?
I definitely agree. And also another thing is we should feel more comfortable as a society speaking on these things with more than just a therapist. Not saying that you shouldn't talk to just a therapist, but I'm saying talk to it with your community, with that soul tribe, because that's what they're there for sometimes. And you can use and you can learn so much from them because we're all here together and we're all going through similar things but different at the same time, and we can all learn so much from each other.
I agree. I agree. There's people that I connected with that I hadn't seen in years, and like they live in different states. Like I mean, I met you online, I want to say. I feel like we have mutual connections, yes, but then we met up in person, blah blah blah. But I'm going to also to back to that same statement. Social media allowed people to kind of get connected in that sense as well. But that was great. That was great what you just said, for sure. Have you found that being in isolation has forced you to confront any spiritual or existential questions that you may not have considered before?
Definitely. I do believe that being in isolation has forced me to confront some of those spiritual or existential questions because that was just the beginning of my journey at that time. And I was learning so many things. I have to admit that I was young before. So a lot of the stuff that happened in my life I wasn't able to heal correctly from or really analyze psychologically. But when I had learned about spirituality in the forms of self care and self healing, it really helped me foreshadow and do shadow work on those certain things. And it really made me see it in a different perspective and not see it only in the way of that was wrong, but what I got from it. And because there's always something positive, no matter how bad it may be. And thinking about these things and doing shadow work with them helped me clear my head during the difficult time of isolation. A lot of work with them helped me clear my head. And people describe isolation to be like in a closet full of your skeletons or your past or your ghosts. And I could relate to that a bit because I was learning at the same time. So it was super important to protect my energy from everything that was going on in social media, like I said. And I feel like the little times of isolation that we still experience today, because it's not like we're all outside 24/7. So the times of isolation we do have today, I use I use those tools that I learned, and I've encouraged people to really reflect and do that shadow work at their time to really help them heal.
You say a very important word right there, shadow work. Can you give us some examples of some shadow work if you wish to share that you personally do?
So I have this thing where like I think a lot you see it on social media a little bit where you are in a group setting and it's all great and you're really in the moment. I'm very big on being present. But when after that finishes and when I'm just sitting in my bed looking at like people's stories about the day and like what everybody sent pictures in the group chat, I really like look and like I analyze every single thing that happened and my way of communicating and what I could have done better, what I could have said better, and what type of connection I built moving further and etc.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. For example, for me, something that I do is write. So I write in my journal. I actually have like these books that give you prompts to kind of like help you think of certain scenarios and kind of express yourself. It's important to express yourself. This is shadow work, me
Definitely.
getting on my podcast and having these conversations, like you're saying, with the community that we're building, no matter what age or circumstance. We're all, like you said, in this together, this thing called life that no one has the guidebook to, and just trying to do the best that we can, right?
Definitely. And I also am interested in writing, and I write a bit on my notes on my phone because, I'm a little more digital because
Mhm.
these are the days how they are, unfortunately. And I write on my notes sometimes how I'm feeling. And I also talk to myself and like have conversations with myself. And it
Yeah,
really helps me see things for what they are because it's different when you hear something in your head and when you hear something when you say it out loud.
yeah. That's true. It's important because it's like putting stuff to paper. When you have a
Yes.
goal, you need to write a plan. You need to really visualize how it is you're going to execute it. I think having conversations with yourself, mirror work. I get in front of the mirror and I tell myself, you're beautiful, you're smart. You got to give yourself the pep talk because sometimes we
Definitely.
don't have that luxury to be around the people who will normally, encourage us and cheer us on. They have their lives. So it's important for ourselves to definitely be that source for that.
And I think that's really important too, especially during isolation. I feel like if we would have known all of this before, we would have had a better experience. And I feel like it would have been great.
Of course. And I think that it has a lot to do with, healing generational curses.
Yes.
And for example, like my mother's generation, it was like they migrated to the United States. They wanted to make a better living for themselves. And trials and tribulations, they knock in. So a lot of things get left unsaid or you avoid them. I think it's important to tackle everything and, leave nothing left unsaid, because you don't want to ever, excuse me, say, damn, like I regret. I'd rather be so open and express myself to the T and not leave anything left out and be cringe, as they like to say, than be silent and like in the corner like that. You might have the greatest idea, and because you're so shy or you don't want to step out of line, you feel you're in your own head, you might pass up an opportunity.
Yes, and I love that you said you included your mom and how they traveled here and migrated because I feel like that's really important and I think it's important to discuss this type of stuff with our families and the people that migrated here because I feel like it's all about group healing within and the bloodline especially.
Yeah, there's it's tough because a lot of people like, and I'm gonna only speak for myself. People don't like to have these conversations. So when you bring it up,
Mhm.
sometimes your tone, it comes off a little, not you specifically, but for me, I have to work on my delivery, I guess. But for me, it's like this is the kind of delivery that will only get you to listen, type of thing. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can agree to a certain extent about that.
And these topics aren't easy. They're not like,
No.
flowers, and these are complex conversations that are going to get uncomfortable. So there's kind of no way to kind of sugarcoat these kinds of talks.
Yeah, and especially when you have to really consider other people's feelings because we weren't there, we didn't go through what our grandparents and our parents and our great grandparents went through. So we also have to be considerate about their feelings, and I feel like that's a part of having that conversation and a part of all that healing.
Yes, yes, definitely having compassion and allowing for them to heal, because at that moment they're going to start to heal. Once you have those conversations, they're going to start to really realize, like, okay, I see your perspective now, or I
Mhm.
understand now where that came from. So
Yes.
definitely. Let's move on to something else. In what ways has isolation allowed you to become more introspective and reflective about your spirituality?
I feel like this is a question for me to answer from the ends of isolation because it helps me reflect on the fact that I was proud of this new journey that I went on and everything that I learned about myself and everything that I healed from. But it also gave me an eye to read people's energy by certain behaviors, but also to be more in tune with my dreams because I dream a lot and I am, in my opinion, I feel like they're messages from my ancestors
Mhm.
and my culture. I really, really love my culture and I feel like that is something that a lot of people look over, and I feel like we get a lot from our culture and a lot of things are passed on like generational curses, but not just generational curses. So I feel like it's something to really admire.
Definitely. Yeah, there's always duality. Just like there's light, there's dark. So
Right.
there's light that you also bring and that you could uh project and use to your advantage to manifest
Mhm.
to create the realities that you deserve and desire. Um I think our culture, you're Dominican, right? Shout
Yes.
out to the Hispanic community. And I don't even like to say Hispanic because that word is kind of like it has a whole nother meaning, but this is
Yes.
not a history podcast. I'm not gonna go down the rabbit hole of that. But definitely our roots have a lot to do with spirituality and where it kind of comes from, at least from my perspective, for sure.
Yes.
Have you found that isolation has made it easier or more difficult to find a sense of purpose? Do you think that you know what your purpose is?
I don't think so. And I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I feel like it takes a lot to find your purpose. And it's all a journey throughout your life. And this is a super deep question. And I stand
Mhm.
that it kind of makes it easier, but there's also that fear of losing yourself in it because a lot of us came out a different person from isolation. And the person before isolation wouldn't even believe that we would be the person that we are today. So we after isolation, and that's a crazy way to think about it, but us after isolation is I feel like we were given a new purpose after isolation. And
Yeah,
I believe that make help us make us think and had that time to reflect because you may not have been doing shadow work specifically, but you were definitely reflecting. You were definitely in your head a lot.
yeah.
And would you prefer a question to everybody, would you prefer the you before isolation or after isolation? Because they are two different people in a way. They may have similar characteristics and you may see some of the behavior from before in today's setting, but we don't live the same day by day that we did before. How would you answer that question?
Honestly, like it's crazy because I remember looking back at older episodes that aren't up right now, and I'm just like, wow, like I became a mom during that time. So a lot of what I was going through was personal. So I wanted to really kind of soak in that. And I definitely came out of isolation more reserved, more distant, on territorial mode. And I think it has a lot to do because I was a mom, but also because of the media, like how they were trying to make COVID such an extreme deal at the time, which, with all due respect, it was like the
Yes.
things that happened, they happened. But for me, I had to do a lot of unlearning and I had to do a lot of uh, rethinking and ask myself, what are my values? Like before, I used to be this, this, and that. Now they're not this, this, and that. Now they're this, So you change, like you said, like you're supposed to change. Change is important. I hope I answered your question.
Also, another question, if you don't mind, do you feel like your purpose did change as well?
I feel like I definitely lost a little bit of passion in my purpose. I feel like I used to be a little bit more enthused by the things that I felt like drove me. And so I had to do some reevaluating and kind of like, okay, tap into certain goals that I didn't finish. The world is changing and we don't know when the next pandemic can happen. So I want to be able to secure myself in all ways.
Do you believe you're ready for the next pandemic if there is one?
If there is one, I think I am. I think, I've been doing the work I could be doing a lot more. I'm giving myself grace and I'm not really stressing and also trying to be present because a lot of this work is being present. Because then if you're not, you're just gonna, like I said, self sabotage and you don't want to steer yourself in the wrong direction. So I think I would be ready, you know, mentally at least. Are you?
I think I am ready. I think I would. Of course, we would all do things a little differently now that we know what it entails. But I think I would be more ready to deal with isolation with now having my spiritual path not complete because we're always still learning, but knowing more about it and not being at the beginning like I was in the first isolation.
Right. And you also said, I mean, we were all young at the time. That was
Yeah,
3 years ago now. Like, that's crazy to even say
yeah.
how much time has gone by. And, you know, it's just about moving forward and being around the people who are going to encourage you and give you love and light. It's all about staying in that frequency because I think for a long time they try to kind of shed too much darkness about what was going on and not really giving us the right information, advising us to do things that we didn't really have full knowledge of. Today I was on Twitter and I feel like that was a conversation about how, you know, they were discussing the unvaccinated and how irresponsible people who didn't get the vaccine are. And I'm gonna publicly come out and say that I didn't get the vaccine. And, you know, I think that divided us. And it still is a conversation that lingers. How do you feel about that?
I think that I hate to say it, but there's so much that divides us already. And I feel like that was just something else to divide us and to put us against each other. Because if you look at it demographically and politically, the people that did not get vaccinated and the people that did get vaccinated, there's two different sides to it. And I feel like we are in a country where we supposedly have free rights, and I don't think that's being expressed expressed correctly because a lot of people, like you said on Twitter and on social media, have different opinions on it.
Right, definitely. Um, I just think that that's a tough subject and it's something that we still need to heal, you know, collectively. I think.
Yes.
Have you adopted your spiritual practices to fit within the confines of isolation?
I think because I was in the beginning of it, not so much, but a little bit because I was learning. But shout out to Amazon. No, this is not an Amazon ad. But during the isolation, Amazon was really there for a lot of us. And throughout my learning process, I needed books to like study, and I was also getting really in tune with oracle cards and tarot cards, and it was just all something to really learn from. And I think it goes back to the community where you learn from each other, but you guys are also in isolated spaces away from each other. And I feel like the resources from online and the resources from that community, it really helped me practice and fit within the confines.
I feel that. I feel that. For a lot of people who don't know, you know, oracle cards and tarot, those are tools. A lot of people are informed about what these things do or like how you could use them for yourself. Yeah, oracle cards are tools that people use to do the work and to what how do you use them?
I'm gonna be honest. It's been this many years and I'm still not comfortable with using them because I'm still learning. So
Okay.
I use them when it comes to just looking for clarity and a message for myself because I feel like it's all about you learning for yourself and you getting clarity on certain things that go on in your life before it is for anybody else. So I'm still not comfortable, but I look at them and I use them and I let them talk to me when I feel like the time is needed.
Is that something that you is that an industry that you feel like you'll want to tap into? Like do you have a plan as far as like being a part of that like community or you just have a strong interest in it and just the topic in general?
I believe I have a strong interest in it, and not just an interest. I do feel like I'm very in tune and spiritual myself. So I don't want it to seem like I'm just doing it because it is something that I saw and I was interested in. I'm doing it because I feel like I was called to it, and I feel like I'm very just spiritually in tune with myself, and I feel like that's what I need in some type of way. I'm joining the community and joining that industry. I'm not sure of as to wherever my path wants to lead me. That's not something that I'm 100% sure of and not 100% on top of right now, but I would be open to it if that's what are in the cards for me.
Has isolation made it easier or more difficult to maintain your spiritual beliefs and practices?
I believe it makes it easier when it comes to being in isolation, but also more difficult when we aren't in isolation and we are in a group settings where the majority of the group is spiritual, because I feel like we have trouble communicating sometimes how we feel, like we were discussing in the beginning. I do believe that we have to work on that communication in person, especially because we got used to being with that virtual community. And I feel like if we are in person, I feel like that's a much more powerful group. And not having to hold up to certain expectations when it comes to socializing is something that I think we all need to discuss. So I do believe that the pandemic and us isolating had its pros and cons, but I think we're all gonna get there eventually. And I feel like we're getting there slowly but surely.
I would say for me, I'm less talkative. Like before the pandemic, I was really outgoing. I wanted to be at any networking event. I wanted to be in any social setting, meet new people. When the pandemic happened, I was more quiet, more observant, listening, and kind of just like not really wanting a lot of attention. Have you found that isolation has given you a greater appreciation for the natural world and the interconnectedness of all things?
Isolation has definitely given me a greater appreciation for the natural world, but also for us as a society, I feel like, and how we adapt so fast. We adapted to being into isolation and we learned so much. And I feel like how fast we grow with the things that troubled us, like the pandemic, the natural world as well, because it has to do with the spiritual world. And that learning process that I was going through, I feel like a lot of us went through, especially in the spiritual world. So having that spiritual connection with Mother Nature and with nature, I think it's really important. I feel like we do take it for granted sometimes, our resources, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those resources. So I do feel like isolation gave me a greater appreciation for animals, for plants, for water, for fruits and vegetables, and all of the stuff that we are blessed with.
Yes, I think a lot of people were using a lot of Mother Nature after they were isolated. Like they had to. Some people got into gardening. Some people got into making herbs at home and home remedies to cure things. A lot of people were also on TikTok promoting that and advising people how to handle themselves if God forbid they did catch COVID. And there's a lot of self help remedies that you can do to kind of prevent these symptoms from worsening. It's just something to really think about, I guess, and kind of like you said, appreciate that those resources are still here and that we can utilize them.
Definitely. What about you? Do you feel like you reached that greater appreciation, and how was it before?
I feel like before I was more in tune with wanting to be in nature. I feel like my body changed so much that I can barely be outside. Like when I was pregnant, it was right before, I want to say, because the spread was happening in January. I was like 8 months pregnant at the time. Even before I was pregnant, I used to love to go hiking. Like, I don't know, now it's just with learning that things are poison and you have to read the fine lines. You have to check the numbers of the fruits to know which ones are not organic, like really not organic, because the way that they're trying to just kill us is crazy. Like I don't know if you read into that side of things,
Yeah,
but
that's a whole nother conversation.
yeah. So like I don't want to say that I've been um in fear, but I just really been cautious about everything, especially with nature, because
Yeah.
even most recently, veganism has become a big trend and alkaline, and it's like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, I'm practicing those things, but it's like now they saying you can't have cauliflower. Cauliflower's fake. It's like, damn, like you trying to be one way, and then they try to, I
Yeah.
don't know. But definitely, I would say I'm strengthening that relationship for sure. I just my body has changed. I can't be around it like that. I get triggered easily by it. So I don't know if that's like the universe telling me something. But definitely gonna try at least this summer to get back into that mode. I like going to the beach. I like listening to the waves. I don't like to swim in the waters, especially in the East Coast waters. I would rather go to DR or like, the tropics where you could see the the sand and shit like that, or like the fishes in the water. Like this
Mhm.
water up here is sus to me. Um, so yeah, those are my ways to connect, especially with water. Like I feel like water is one of the most natural resources that I admire the most. I think, even though I have a little bit of fear of it, I overcame it when I went on my solo trip in 2022. I jumped into a river, a waterfall actually, and that was like something that I probably would have never done because I just don't have that connection, like that trust with water. Water is like, you gotta be careful. How do you feel about, like, what is the like, do you like land? Do you like sand? Do you like water? Like, is that a
I like land, to be honest, because it just depends on the type of land and the type of infrastructure. Because I like just seeing like acres and miles of flat land, surprisingly, because I just like to see how far the world stretches itself.
this beautiful thing?
Yes. I also enjoy the mountains and seeing the heights. That's also something that I really enjoy. It just gives me just a sense of peace.
Nice. Yes. So you're not afraid of heights.
Not really.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are afraid of heights. Like they won't go on a plane for too long. Like the
Yeah.
farthest they'll go is like 3 hour ride. Like would you do like a 12-hour ride on an airplane?
I think it has less to do about heights for me with the 12-hour ride and more about the comfortability
Hmm.
because that's a long time. But I think I'll be good because with me, I'm thinking about the destination.
That's me too. I'll be just like in my mind, like, okay, I'm going to Dubai or I'm going to
Yeah.
wherever, Europe. Definitely. I like to travel. That's something that I want to definitely do again soon. I've been dying to go to DR. I haven't been to DR since 2013. It's been literally 10 years. And I feel like once I step into DR, I'll kind of have a more sense of my spirituality. Like I
I,
was born in America, but I used to always, as a child, travel to Dominican Republic, and I feel like that, like we were talking about earlier, that has a lot to do with why I'm interested in this topic that we're talking about today, and why I think it's important to nurture that because it's gonna only help us evolve. Like I look at my life today and I'm like, damn, like these are things that I once imagined in my head to have, and I'm actually doing these things. And it may not be as lavish and as big. One day it will be, and I'm gonna just always, thank myself for pushing myself and encouraging others, to do what it is that they love and they want to do, so that they can be their authentic and happy selves. And I think isolation has a lot to do with that, with really sitting down and asking yourself why you are this way, or how you can change, or what your great qualities are, and kind of just appreciate who you are and not always try to grow, grow, grow. there's a point where you could just chill and embrace and live life, you know?
Definitely. In isolation, you definitely admire yourself. I can say that for myself. I was definitely looking at my features like, oh wow, you like have really, really nice eyes looking in the mirror, or I am blessed to have such beautiful hair texture, or I love that my skin is as melanin as it is, and I love it how it is.
Right, definitely. And that has to do a lot with kind of limiting other people's opinions of how they feel or how society may
Yes.
project on how you should look and how you should be. And social media, like we were talking about earlier, has its pros and cons. Sometimes I get on social media and I'll be like, damn, like I'm supposed to have a six pack and I'm supposed to, have all of these features, but it's like no, like you have to love yourself the way that you are. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. As long as you're healthy, happy, and sane, at peace, I think that that's the most important thing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. You have to love yourself and continue to love yourself and tell yourself how much you love yourself and how grateful you are to be the person that you are, because the way you move is the way you want to move. And that's just all a part of you being you. And I think you have to also think about self-care and your health. That's also important. So I feel like the less we worry about a lot of our physical traits, the more we can worry about our mental and our health inside of ourselves and inside of our body and in the bloodstream.
Right, yes, because everything is connected. And if your cortisone levels are high, you're triggering, organs to not work properly. And it's just, it all connects. And we know so little about those things. I feel like we need to really educate ourselves. The health industry needs to educate the world about those things instead of like the basic things that they thought that we needed to know. Like we know the food chain, we need
Yeah.
to know more about the brain chain. Like, is there a brain chain, and can they break it down for people? Because, like you said, we got to get together as a collective, and show up for each other, help the lady cross the street, or you know guide that teen into the self-care realm, because I feel like a lot of the things that are projected in the music, and this is where the music comes involved for me, um is not giving people the right message. Like, yeah, there's a time and a place to have fun, and yeah, some of the songs are catchy. But what are we really manifesting when we are listening to these things? And if you're not consciously aware, or like, or if you don't know yourself, you're gonna be steered into the wrong direction.
Definitely. This reminds me of something that one of my favorite influencers said. Shout out to the Hood Healer. I think you know her as well. But she said that the music we listen to, especially the music we love, we say it out loud and we scream it, and it's all a part of manifestation. And we need to really be careful what we're listening to and actually read the lyrics of what we're listening to, because you never know.
No, of course. And that's a big reason why I started Bard Says So. In the beginning, when I first started, I was more talking about the songs and the messages, that certain songs that I liked, and growing up, the songs that I would chant, and kind of looking at my life and be like, that manifested there, low key, So I definitely agree. Yes, shout out to the Hood Healer. I like what she does. And I definitely follow what she has to say. Yeah, I just think that there has to be a balance. You have to definitely be careful with what you say, because your words are powerful. You want to always channel, you know, high vibration energy. I know there's toxic positivity too that people like to push. So none of that. Feel your feelings. You can be upset. You can
Yes.
be angry. You can have, you know, different moods. You don't have to be this robot of sunshine. So yes.
And I think to like add to that, I feel like in the music, instead of saying more of this is what it is, think of what this can turn into. Like I said, there's always a positive to a negative, and there's always something more to it. So instead of saying I'm just sad, we gotta say I'm sad, but I'm gonna grow from that. I'm gonna level up.
Right. There was something actually that I found out the other day that people don't realize when you're manifesting. You, like you just said, I'm sad, but I can overcome this. When you're manifesting, you have to be like, I am free and use the word and able to align myself with the divine timing of my timeline. Like you have to incorporate the and stick, like make it a fuller statement, be specific about what it is that you want, and also put in the work. A lot of people think like, oh, all I have to do is write in a journal and post pictures on a bulletin and just look at the bulletin. No, you have to actually put yourself out there. You want to be an influencer? Okay, well, you need to buy a tripod and you need to do more, TikToks. You need to do more reels on Instagram. You need to build a YouTube channel, build more of a presence, engage more with people if that's really what you want to do. You want to be a artist, you got to buy more paint supplies. You got to practice your stroke on a paper. Like it takes work. It's not just writing it, visualizing it. It's actually learning the craft and building towards it.
Definitely, and I feel like that also comes with the self healing once again, because I feel like when you're helping yourself heal, it comes with learning these hobbies and these different ways you can help heal yourself.
Excuse me.
And like you were saying, art as a career, but as a hobby, I feel like art can help us all express ourselves in different ways.
Yes, I actually learned that art for my specific daughter, she's a Pisces like me,
Mm.
and I like astrology, so I tap into her chart and learn that the more she draws and uses art, the less tantrums she's gonna have. And yes, she does have tantrums. She's a child, she's still learning herself. She, I can say, has probably had only a handful of moments where I'm just like, oh no, we gotta go. So definitely art is a huge tool to use in healing. I have coloring books that I even color myself because that's kind of like therapy. That's therapeutic. You just put in pen to paper, just like we were talking about writing. Writing is good. Putting your thoughts. You don't want all the thoughts to just sit in your head. You gotta release them somehow. And like we spoke about earlier, having conversations with yourself. I have a podcast doing that. I talk to myself all the time. So
Mhm.
it's important to express, let it out so that you're not stuck thinking about things that happened, in 2008 or something.
Yes, and shout out to you for helping your daughter and steering her, leading her in that direction to draw more, to not stop, like to avoid those tantrums. Because I feel like starting these types of self healing mechanisms to at such a young age is very much key to how you continue using those self healing tools.
Yes, yes, and to break the cycles because
Yes.
you don't want to. I don't want my daughter to ever have to experience some of the things that I had to experience. And had I known that I could have continued to write, because I remember I still have journals of when I was a little girl, songs I used to write. I still have those songs because I like music. So I've always been very theatrical. I've always joined, plays as a kid or the choir team. I played the trombone at one time. Like I was just always so like involved. So I'm definitely gonna, if I see that she likes that, I'm gonna definitely encourage her and allow her to express herself. I'm not gonna per se push her to have a career. If she would like, okay, cool, because we've all seen childhood stars and how sometimes it could have just been a hobby for some people,
Yeah.
because they turned out to be a little bit, but I don't want to talk about nobody on this podcast, but,
Yes.
you know, just, make sure that whatever it is that she wants to do, it's because she wants to do it.
course, yes.
Thank you again for being here. Young king, your
Thank
mother is doing a great job guiding you and has done a great job of raising you. You're going to do amazing things.
I'm really grateful for the opportunity and grateful for everything that I've been blessed with for sure.
No problem. Like I said, like it's all about expressing, healing, learning, and just being human, and putting titles to the side or, images or egos and kind of just being you, doing you.
Yes, and definitely I would like to say that isolation really made me come up with like a few mottos and a few affirmations for myself. And it was something that had a lot of cons because we were all really going through it emotionally, I feel like. But also it had a lot of pros. We learned so much from it. And like one thing that I learned from isolation, or one thing that I taught myself, was this motto that I go by, and it's live every day like you're gonna die tomorrow, but also live every day like you have a 100-year lifespan. And I say that because I do believe that people take experience or moments for granted sometimes, but I also believe that you should take some of those experience and take your time and go at your own pace, because you do have so much time and we have to value each minute and each hour that we get. So isolation really made me rethink how I use my time and how grateful I really am for that.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's important. You're healing so many generations, inspiring so many people, and we learn from the youth. And I want to be able to learn from Esme and put myself aside and really understand her generation. Everybody comes from a different generation, and we all just have to kind of get back into the space of helping one another. I think everybody was or is stuck on me mentality. Oh, I need to have this, or I need to have ownership of this. And it's just like, why can't we build as a team, like as a community? Like we have a big population of people who think just like us. They're going to be listening to this episode, and we're just going to connect more dots.
Definitely. And like, you want to learn from your daughter, I feel like we should also want to learn from our family, and like our aunts and our uncles and our cousins and our parents especially. Like, I really want to learn more about my culture with my grandma and my mother, and how the spiritual paths were different back then, and how spiritual they were and how they connected to certain things.
Right, right. And whatever you put your mind to is going to happen. So I really hope that you get those answers that you are calling for, so that you can, grow into whatever it is that you want to be. You don't have to have the answers today. As long as you have the answers to your heart, that I think that's all that really matters at this point. You can
And I
let
think from this podcast and the topic of isolation, I feel like I just really want to suggest to listeners that communication is so important. And once again, taking your time, using time wisely is very important, because there's just so much going on, and you got to be grateful and don't take things for granted, especially when it comes to your family and life stories and different paths. It's really important to communicate with each other.
Yes, that's very important. Thank you for sharing that, because you know not only does it involve people talking, but people have to also understand and listen. I think a lot of the times, especially when we're dealing with family, we talk to respond. And it's like we have to really just sit and gather our thoughts and kind of, allow ourselves to be honest and not just have superficial conversations.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's all about that communication, and once again healing altogether. And once again, it takes time, and you know it might feel like forever, but you have so much time, and you just need to take your time, but also use your time wisely.
Yeah, like I guess prioritize it. Like if that's something that you really want to do, then definitely prioritize and take time to build, for
Yep.
example, those relationships if they're so important.
Yes, of course.
Did you want to add anything else before we wrap it up?
I think that is it.
Okay, thank you again for coming on the show. You guys tune in, follow if you want to put your stuff out there. You want to give the world your at or
Yes, you guys can follow me on Instagram at underscore ITZ underscore Jordany, Jordany underscore. And if you guys ever need support or somebody to just talk to, I'm definitely here. I'm here to help the collective and be there for each other because building that community is important once again.
Nice. Thank you. I'm glad to be sharing this conversation with you and the world.
Definitely. I would also like to hear like what the fans want to hear and certain topics they would like to discuss. I feel like that's really important.
Yes, drop a comment. This will be on YouTube. This will also be on Linsing, Apple Podcast channel, iHeartRadio, all of that. So the link is going to be on my website. You can follow me at Bar Says So on Instagram, TikTok. I'm also on Facebook. Active, just trying to manifest the life that I want to live, do the healing that I need to do, and be in the present with the community that I'm building and, leveling up. It's Ambar. It's Ambar.